Alright guys, welcome back to Underground Science, and in this video we're going to be talking about adenosine deaminase deficiency. Alright, so let's go and get started. So remember in the purine salvage pathway we had an enzyme called adenosine deaminase, right? And we said that this enzyme converted adenosine, which is a nucleoside, into inosine. Okay? But what we didn't mention is that, so we said adenosine gets converted to inosine, but we should also know that adenosine deaminase helps convert deoxyadenosine into deoxyinosine. Okay, so deoxyadenosine into deoxyinosine. Okay, so adenosine deaminase helps convert adenosine into inosine and deoxyadenosine into deoxyinosine. So if you're deficient in this enzyme now, right? So if we're deficient in this enzyme, so we don't have this enzyme or we're deficient in it, what happens is now you can't convert adenosine into inosine. So adenosine starts to build up. Okay, so that's one thing that happens. And also you cannot convert deoxyadenosine into deoxyinosine. So that means deoxyadenosine starts to build up also. Okay, so again, adenosine deaminase deficiency leads to the buildup of adenosine and the buildup of deoxyadenosine. All right, and why is that bad? Well, both deoxyadenosine and adenosine are actually toxic to lymphocytes. Okay, so let's write that down. So deoxyadenosine, and adenosine, right, at elevated levels, right, because we're building these up because adenosine deaminase isn't working. So we should draw an up arrow here. Elevated levels of deoxyadenosine and adenosine can be toxic to what? Lymphocytes. Okay, so our T lymphocytes specifically, and a little bit for our B lymphocytes also. So T and B lymphocytes. So that's one thing that happens. And also what happens is because we have a buildup of deoxyadenosine, right? What happens is deoxyadenosine can get phosphorylated, okay? Specifically get 3 phosphates added to it and turn into deoxyadenosine triphosphate. So this can turn into deoxyadenosine triphosphate because we have a bunch of deoxyadenosine building up, okay? So we can just phosphorylate that and turn it into deoxyadenosine triphosphate, or DATP. So it's basically deoxyadenosine with 3 phosphates. Now, why is an elevation in DATP bad? Well, DATP, what it actually does, high levels of DATP will actually inhibit an enzyme called, let's do that in a different color, called ribonucleotide reductase. So remember this enzyme, right? Remember this enzyme was good for, it's important for converting ribonucleotides into deoxyribonucleotides, Finish writing that. Okay, so that's important to know. Okay, high levels of DATP will inhibit ribonucleotide reductase, which is important for converting ribonucleotides to deoxyribonucleotides. So what's an example of this? Well, remember in the pyrimidine synthesis pathway, for example, right? Remember when we did all those things and all those steps happened, right? Until we reached to the point where we made UMP, uridine monophosphate, and then from there we can convert that to UDP and then to DUDP, right? Well, this conversion from a ribonucleotide to a deoxyribonucleotide is done by ribonucleotide reductase, all right? And so if you inhibit this, you cannot create DNA, right? You cannot create adequate amounts of DNA. So what we can write is you'll have decreased DNA synthesis because you can't create as many deoxyribonucleotides anymore, right? So you're going to have decreased DNA synthesis. So decreased DNA synthesis in itself is going to be bad for lymphocytes. So decreased DNA synthesis means you can't really have many lymphocytes. You're going to have a decreased amount of lymphocytes. All right, because remember, lymphocytes when you need proper DNA synthesis in order to have your cells proliferate properly, right? So if you don't have proper DNA synthesis, you can't have many lymphocytes present. So you're going to have a decreased number of lymphocytes because you don't have proper DNA synthesis, so your cells won't proliferate. Okay, so this will it can affect your lymphocytes in your thymus, so your T lymphocytes, and your lymphocytes in your bone marrow, which are your B lymphocytes, right? So when we're talking about bone marrow, we're mainly talking about the B lymphocytes, and thymus, we're talking about the T lymphocytes, right? Because remember, T lymphocytes go to your thymus to mature. So again, decreased DNA synthesis will lead to decreased number of lymphocytes because you need proper DNA synthesis for proper growth of your cells. So if you don't have good DNA synthesis, because ribonucleotide reductase is inhibited, then that means you cannot have proper numbers. You cannot have a proper number of lymphocytes. So your lymphocyte count decreases. Okay, so that can, for example, put you more of a risk make you a higher risk of getting an infection. Okay. Something else you should know is that we'll talk about this later. Adenosine Deaminase Deficiency is one of the causes for severe combined immunodeficiency. All right. But we'll talk about this disease more in a future video. Okay, the main thing in this video was getting that adenosine deaminase deficiency, right, will lead to the buildup of deoxyadenosine triphosphate, which will inhibit ribonucleotide reductase, which means you cannot properly synthesize DNA anymore, which means that's going to be toxic to your T lymphocytes and your B lymphocytes. And if you don't have proper DNA synthesis, you cannot proliferate and grow your cells properly, which means you're going to have a decreased lymphocyte count. And that's going to be basically taking a huge hit on your immune system because a decreased amount of lymphocytes means you can't fight infections off properly. So that puts you at a higher risk of getting certain infections. And also, it's good to note that adenosine deaminase deficiency, right, is one of the causes for severe combined immunodeficiency. All right, so that's basically it for this video for adenosine deaminase deficiency. And in the next video, we will talk about Lesch-Nyhan syndrome, all right, and other diseases. So hopefully you enjoy this video.